Well, first of all, thank you for doing this with me. I appreciate it. This is going to be fun because though you and I have known each other for what, like 4
4 years?
years,
Uh-huh.
we have not really talked about this, right? And I'm not
No.
in depth, so this is pretty fun. And
Oh,
I
thanks
wanted
for
to,
having me.
well, you're welcome. I wanted to talk to you specifically about this whole idea of creating and how it is really a healthy thing to do, spend time
Mm-hmm.
doing. And the reason for that is because I think we're really aligned kind of in our idea around that. And for instance, I believe that when we allow ourselves to kind of embark on these imperfect creative journeys,
Yes.
endeavors, that it is really not only good for our soul, but it's also,
Mm.
good for our mental health, which then in
Yes.
turn is good for our body, right? So
Uh-huh.
it's a very holistic approach to, doing something that's just really, really wonderful. And I know your primary mission with your work is to help women find healing and joy through
Yes.
creating.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, I think that we're just kind of on the same page with that. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, because absolutely, because I believe, in my view, my content is more towards for you to find in art, in playing
Mm.
with supplies and paints, to find, the inner peace and sometimes the mental clarity that we need. Because I think sometimes, um, for me, helped me tremendously with anxiety. And if you, of course, come in this practice with an open mind and not judgment with yourself, which can also be a learning point for you. Because
Yeah.
what I try to teach is just, you know, take whatever you have and use whatever you have, and just detach yourself from the problems, but immerse yourself in what color and playing with supplies can bring you.
Yes.
In this case, I'm talking about art supplies, of course.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I think it's important for us too to define kind of what we mean by the word creative, like at least in the context of this
Mm.
conversation, right? And basically, that is simply to create. It's
Mm-hmm.
not saying that somebody has to be quote unquote good at it, right?
No.
Or some sort of artistic genius. It's really just this idea of creating for the sake of creating, right? And
Right.
there's what thousands of different ways people create.
Mm-hmm.
There's, everything from arts and crafts and culinary creations and
Yes.
digital creations and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, design, the list goes on and on. And then there's one of my favorites, which I don't know, people wouldn't consider it art, and I don't either, but it's fun and it's creative and it's coloring. It's these beautiful illustrated
Yeah.
adult coloring books that you can get
Mm-hmm.
these lovely colored pencils and things, and you can just, it's so easy and relaxing and lovely, and it's still creating these beautiful color palettes,
Yeah, and
and
it's still creative because despite someone have drawn for you, whatever
mm-hmm.
you're coloring, you were the one that putting the colors that speak to you on that drawing.
Yes,
And
I agree.
and don't you agree that when you're coloring, you just forget about everything and your
Oh,
mind relax?
absolutely. It
Right.
is the ultimate exercise. I think creating in general is the ultimate exercise in just mindfulness, right?
Yes.
It's just
Yes.
it comes so naturally without you even trying. Where sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we really try to make ourselves be mindful and in the moment, and because we
Yeah.
know it's a healthy thing to do. But when you create, it just happens
Yeah.
naturally. It's the
Mm-hmm.
easiest way to get there, I think.
Yeah.
That's for
And
sure.
and like you were talking, I agree. So I talk about this on my podcast as well. Creation, I bring in my podcast not just artists that paint like me. I
Hmm.
bring all kinds of people because I believe that creativity means you are creating something yourself, you are creating stuff with your hands, you are doing something. And nobody says that creativity means just you are a big artist, and that's what counts as creativity. Even
Yeah.
the big masters, when they were not famous, and some of them had to die before getting famous, they
Oh,
did
so
many
true.
things that they never thought it would be famous. They had hundreds of sketches, hundreds of, you know, written things, and they would do all kinds of things. And it's a matter of just the practice. And as I said before, I believe that creativity is related to your mental health
Yes.
because I have trouble, for example, meditation. And
Mm-hmm.
I found in art a way for me to meditate because in that moment I'm just with myself and
Yes.
I can, not think about my ego, not think about anything, but concentrate that. That's what you get when you color. Some people get when they cook, some people get that with pottery, and
Mm-hmm.
some people get that with scrapbooking and doing
Yep.
paper crafts. And that's why paper craft industry is a big industry. There is a
Mm-hmm.
reason that people don't stop, why you feel so happy and why you feel that pleasure to do things with your hands.
Absolutely. I agree. And especially in this digital world that we live in, it feels so good to get off of a screen and just do something offline with your
Yes.
hands. It doesn't
Yeah.
even matter what it is. What do you say to those women who love the idea of creating in some way, shape, or form, but they honestly believe, really truly believe, that they don't have a creative bone in their body, and so
Yeah.
they don't even try?
Yeah, this is a very common perspective, right? People think that
Mm-hmm.
they are not creative. And every human being is creative. Every human being. The point, I think the
Yeah.
problem is when we think that creativity is tied to big pieces of art and being an artist. And when we're talking about creation, we are not talking about here that you're going to sell your pieces or you're going to put your pieces in gallery. We are talking about the inner work and inner, you know, work with yourself and giving joy to yourself.
Yes.
So for that, every human being is creative. The thing is not letting the fear, comparison, and judgment with yourself to block that. But
Yeah.
we never stopped being creative since we are born in this world and we are children. The difference between with children is that children don't care
Mm-hmm.
about what they create. They just have curiosities about the crayon and the paint, and they want to put up their hands and they're going to smash on their faces. Because in reality, what they're doing, they are experimenting and they don't think
Exactly.
about judgments. But if you grab a coloring book or if you grab things that you're doing yourself in your room, why do you think that is not creative? It is. It is creative.
I agree, and I think we are all born with uh, a certain amount of creativity as well. Maybe
Absolutely.
some people it comes a little more easily; they're a little more dialed into it, but I think we all have it, and I think it's just a matter of trying different things to find the things that we enjoy. And sometimes you have to try a lot of different things to find what you enjoy.
And I would say also that creativity is like exercise.
Mm-hmm.
The more you exercise, the more you get good at it. The
Mm-hmm.
more you
Yes.
exercise, you know when you go to the gym, there's a machine that you don't know well, but since a trainer or somebody teaches you how
Mm-hmm.
to use that machine, and then you start and it's okay, and then with time you are pro at that machine, right? And
Yes.
creativity is the same thing. It's about the practice, showing up, you know, in the practice, and you're gonna get better, and the idea is gonna start flowing better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. And I also think that, it can be a little bit awkward at first, but and going back to what you're saying about how children embrace the idea of being creative and they have so
Mm-hmm.
much fun with it. And I kind of feel like the reason a lot of adults feel like they're not creative is because that belief, that self-belief, that story they've been telling themselves comes from someplace, right? it,
Mm-hmm.
it it comes from something somewhere in their life, probably that something that happened as a child. Maybe they created out of joy and they were so excited and happy about it, and then somebody said something
Mm-hmm.
nasty or they weren't supportive or whatever, and then that just planted this seed in their head, like, oh, I love this but I'm no good at it,
Mm-hmm.
and so if I'm no good at it I probably shouldn't do it, or something. I don't know, where do you think that sort of belief, that
Well,
limiting belief, comes from?
yeah, it's funny you say that. I said that about in my podcast when we are talking about creativity is that, I did childhood psychology.
Yep.
And in the natural phase of children. So when they are about like up to 3 years old, they are in that stage that they don't care. They play, and they don't even know what they're doing. They don't
Yep.
even know what they can. But they just see color and they see texture and they want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is not a problem, but it's something unfortunately that happens in society. Is that when they are 4 up, they start to have more consciousness about people, and they also look forward for people to see. They want to show and see that feedback. And
Yes.
sometimes what starts to happen is that, you know, they start comparing themselves, and there's nobody sometimes to tell them, you don't need to compare yourself, or you are you and you're creating this with your hand and you are unique. And sometimes they don't receive the feedback that they expect. So they start putting in their mind, well, so and so, it can be anyone, didn't say that it's great enough. So that starts to
Right.
build up to, in their psyche, and starts to create the things that can go up to adulthood and block us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I,
Without us
yeah,
even
I,
knowing.
I think anyone in one part or another, they always think that. I for
Yeah.
sure
I think so
thought
too.
I never was creative enough to paint anything. But I think when you sometimes you have to have some bravery, but sometimes you just have to have curiosity.
Yes.
What if I buy this sketchbook here and grab some Sharpies and see what takes me? Or like you, that you like to buy these beautiful coloring books. From the
Mm-hmm.
coloring books, you maybe have confidence to try to, sketch like them, or even I say
That's a
in
good
my
point.
Instagram that there's nothing more relaxing than just spreading paint on paper. You don't need even to draw. Just
See, I
mix
need to do that.
colors and you're gonna be happy.
Yeah. I need to do it because it makes me happy to watch you do it and watch other people do it. I'm
Yeah.
like, I really need to get my hands in the paint and do some things like that because that looks fun. And I think, I mean, tell me what you think, but I think that when we do start on a new sort of creative endeavor, it doesn't matter whether it's coloring or it's pottery or it's painting. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be cooking for that matter. I think when we're new to it, it's like you said, it can feel awkward. We can feel a little like a fish out of water. And sometimes that's enough for somebody to say, you know what, I don't like this.
Yeah.
Instead of just kind of setting themselves up from the beginning thinking, this is going to feel probably a little, I'm going to bumble my way through this for a
Yeah.
while. And then it's just going to start to feel more and more normal. And I think part of that, getting through that, is to just enter into the whole thing with it's kind of a healthy beginner's mindset, right? Kind of like a child. Be childlike. Allow yourself.
Yes.
You don't have to show your work to anybody. It's not about doing
No.
something that's good. It's about having fun and
Yes.
enjoying it. That's all it's about. It's not about creating a masterpiece. If
Yes.
someday you happen to create a masterpiece, then
Yep.
wonderful. But really, it's just about having this beginner's mindset and being okay with not being good at something. And I think some people, that can be very challenging. They feel, there are some people that feel like they need to be good at everything that they do, or they're just not interested in doing it. And that's unfortunate, especially when it comes to being creative, because you just miss out on so much fun,
Yeah.
and not to mention learning new things and so on and so forth. Um, Tell me, so I know some of them, but what are some of the different ways that you've enjoyed being creative over the years, like the different types of things that you've done? And I know some of them, but I don't know all of them, I'm quite sure. And then when you were brand new to doing these different things, how did you feel? Like, what was going through your mind?
I actually, when I started back in the day, I think 2007, and I started actually as a card maker. I used to do
Okay.
card making, stamping, and coloring, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually loved it. I had so much fun just being able to play with the stamps and stamping and learning techniques. And at that time, well, we didn't have Facebook or Instagram at that time or any of these things.
No.
And
No.
at that time, it was just blogging. I had a blog on the old blog posts
Mm-hmm.
Blogspot or something. They
Yeah.
blogs from
Yeah.
Google, the free blogs from Google, and actually it was great because I discovered other card makers, and we had a little community just between blogs. They would comment on my blog, I would comment. We would exchange cards and mail to each other.
Oh,
I
fun.
have cards still today saved from our exchanges because they're so beautiful. I will never trash them.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful for me. I found a
Mm.
way, not it was amazing to me because it was not just a way for me to have fun and connect. I didn't even have kids at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was to find a community and to
Yeah.
find people. What is amazing about any craft or is when you find people that also love what you do, right? So when you go to a cooking
Absolutely.
class and you see all these people excited about the food, when you go to a pottery class, I did knitting class. We did a knitting class together.
We sure
And
did. That was fun.
and I think when you find that connection, to me was really fun. I never
Mm-hmm.
felt, for sure, maybe here and there I would feel, well, somebody does such beautiful cards. But I never thought like I wanted to be a sell my cards or anything like that. I never sold my cards. So to me it was just the fun.
Sure.
So later I started to create mini albums, which for people that don't know, it's basically just little albums that you do by hand with paper and whatever, and you put pictures and decorate them. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a picture album but handmade. And I had a lot of fun. I did live things when live was just starting. We had a Ustream channel,
Okay.
and when I think Ustream doesn't even work as as stream anymore,
Yeah,
at
I
least
don't hear
not
about it
for
anymore.
yeah. So and to me again, it was the community to have the people there, and um, at that time I started doing classes about albums, and then I started to play on the side with paints and things like that because I then started scrapbooking, but I felt that I never liked the traditional. I always like to
Okay.
put paints in my pages and splatters and brush and
Yeah. That's
all
fun.
things like that. So I think that it started, that thing of like, oh, it's so fun to do this. It's so, I actually was researching something for my blog, and there were some studies now that, asked a group of people to play with art, and another uh, group of people that did something else, but not
Mm-hmm.
art. And they discovered later that their frontal lobe was activated by this. And
Okay.
all of them later, on the research said that they felt more relaxed because
Yeah.
this study is about something that is really high now, which is using art as therapy, which now there is certified, art therapists. Um,
Okay. Wow, I didn't know
you
that.
have to have a certification to do art therapy, but it is using art to work with your emotions. So
Wow.
basically, it's proven that playing with that brings you not joy, but relax your brain,
Yes.
literally. So
Yeah, I can attest to that. Sure. Yeah.
yeah, so I think at that time that's what uh, sparked me, just the fun to play with it. I never really thought about, oh, I'm not good enough. I concentrated on the fun of the supplies.
That's great. Yeah. I think that's the key. I think it is to just think this is for me to have fun and relax and nothing more. Like it's just that simple. And if you can keep that in your mind,
Yeah.
then you can continue to enjoy and it's okay. You don't feel as awkward because you're like this is just for me. And B, you're just and I think you have to be willing to try different things because maybe you do something a little bit and you're like, in my mind I thought this would be more fun, but I've done it for a little while now and I don't really find it that fun. We'll move on to something different because
Yeah.
there's so many
I
things
did
you
so
can
many
do.
different things.
Don't
Yeah.
spend a lot of money up
No.
front. You don't want to spend a lot of money on any hobby or craft or art until you know that something you really
Yeah.
really want to get into. Like give yourself a month or two of doing a lot of it maybe
Oh
before you
gosh,
spend a
yeah.
lot of money.
It took me a long time to have real good paints and oils,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I still say that I still do videos and still post things on my Instagram that are made in a 99-cent, you know, notebook from
Yeah.
Target.
I love it.
And I use that as a sketch, and I love it.
I love it. Yeah, there's no need to spend a fortune on supplies. And it's hard because it's so much fun to have all the best things, that you can afford to do all the fun things. But I have made the mistake multiple times over the years where I've invested a lot of money on something thinking I'm just going to do this all the time and I'm going to love it. And either
it was like me with knitting.
Yes, it's like I don't really love it. Like it's okay, but I've spent all this money. Now I feel obligated to do it. You don't want to put yourself in that situation.
But one thing that I believe solely, I think you should not feel also, many people in crafters is very common. Like you don't have to feel afraid to use your things. They want to save for that special project. I believe that you should use everything.
Yes.
And people may say today, whoa, you're saying that you spend a lot of money on knitting. So, well, but you know what? I went it. I tried. I had fun. We had a group of class together. And I thought I could get that in my brain, and I didn't. And that's fine. Yeah. But I had joy.
And who knows? Maybe 10 or 20 years from now, you'll want to do it again. I've got a box of knitting things that I've picked up more than once over the years, and I will keep them because I know I'll come back to it at some point, So
exactly.
Yeah. Well, I know that you really strongly believe that the process of creating is actually healing and, very healing. And so can you share some of the ways in which you find it to be healing for you? I know you kind of briefly mentioned those a little bit ago, but also not only for you, but for other women that you've talked to and what their experience has been around using, the act of creating for healing.
Well, again, there is research also related to colors. There are colors have impact in ourselves. The same way, for example, smell. That's why essential oils are so powerful. At least I believe solely in essential oils. Every time I'm creating, I have essential oils in my studio. So we are impacted for everything that we basically, absorb. So it's not just things that we put on our skin, but it's also what you smell and what you see. And there is research based, and I have that on my blog, but there's research now that proves that some colors have impact. For example, why every time you see a cream or a candle, when it's about relaxing, it's lavender and it's purple because purple is a color of relaxation. It brings to the brain that connection. And green gives you the energy, the impact. And all the colors, for example, yellow, it brings more a sensation of warm. And that's why people use that in advertisement. It's very well known. McDonald's is not a coincidence that McDonald's colors are red and yellow. It's not a coincidence. That
ketchup
two colors,
and mustard.
Yeah. Yes.
I doubt that's why they chose it, but it's still.
They have, I saw a documentary about how marketing use colors to manipulate, especially hunger and wanting something and catching the attention of the brain. So it is proved marketers use it in the same way that I believe I also use watercolor. And I like to do these washes in color. And sometimes when I do just washes, what it means a wash? A wash is just when you play with a stroke of watercolor paint and water and let it move. Just that.
Yeah.
Just that. You don't need anything else. This is a
and
wash.
Water is so soothing by itself.
You do a wash
right?
on the... Yes. You do a wash on the paper. And seriously, if you do that, for example, with the color purple, grab a color purple of a watercolor, just brush, spray water or paint, play with the water in the brush and just move that paint. You gonna relax.
Yeah.
I did that so many times when I was having anxiety, kind of feeling trigger inside. Not attack.
And you chose colors.
Yes.
You chose
and
colors that were relaxing.
I would go to my studio and I would just do washes. I'm not painting anything. I'm just doing washes of color. And let the color
relaxing colors.
Yeah, and also when you look the watercolor, I especially like watercolor because watercolor has that movement in the water. That when you just keep looking at that movement, I don't know, but right away, my jittery inside, my, people that have anxiety, they feel like their heart is beating too fast and things like that. You
Okay.
feel a little shaky.
Yeah.
It all goes away. And I don't
Isn't
believe
that
that is a
amazing?
coincidence. I believe it's because of power, water, movement, they slow. I
Mm-hmm.
like to put some nice music. I use the app Calm.
Yes.
And I think that is important also. Your environment, right? I like to use my
Absolutely.
essential oils. I put the app Calm. There is also an app called Brain FM that
Mm.
puts music of that are actually related to the brain that calms you down. Is a
Okay.
research based app. And some people like to hear rain and all that. I had so much rain in Washington that I don't like to hear rain. So I just like to hear.
You know me. I love the sound of
I
rain.
know you like it, but I like the
Yeah.
soothing sound. So I think also it's about the environment that you create, right? It's
Yeah,
not
I
also
agree.
just arriving there, sit here while everything is crazy beside you and you're going to paint and the color is going to work. No,
Right.
you also have to do that commitment. For example, when you get a candle, right, and it says lavender relaxing, some people like they do a whole, right, you relax, you put your house on mood, you say, okay, I'm gonna read a book and relax, so you put your candle there.
Yeah.
Recently I received a subscription box a time ago and it came my incense. I've never used incense before, and it came one that was kind of a lavender mix.
Uh-huh.
And if you never use the incense, they are a little different than essential oils. They are a little stronger, I think. The,
Yes, I
the
agree.
smell is a little different. So if you're not used to it, it takes a while to get used to it because they're very different smell than essential oils. But they also have their history about being relaxing. That's why, the Indian people, they use that in their relaxation rituals and all things like that.
Sure.
And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It gives another vibe. I don't know why.
Yeah,
It's different than essential oils in that vibe. So
I agree with
color,
that.
color is so important. I believe that if you sit down, it doesn't matter if it's a pencil, acrylic paint, watercolor, but just if you, for example, grab that cheap notebook from Target, spread some purple colors and mix with white to do just spread on the page. Just spread, not drawing anything.
Keep it very
Uh,
simple.
I do that a lot with leftovers of paint, and it's just
Mm.
so relaxing.
That sounds really. It makes me want to go do it right now. I wish I
Yeah,
had the supplies. Sounds
yeah, but
wonderful.
again, and people can for sure Google that, but there is enough research now to prove that color has impact in our brain and our body. It's something that is well known a lot. Like all the things you see in the supermarket, sometimes they are not the color that they are by coincidence.
Right. Right. Yeah. Advertising makes a big use of the right colors to
Yeah.
persuade us to
Hmm.
do different things that they want us to do. It's pretty interesting. Do you find the other women that you've talked to that is primarily how they find it to be healing too is just it's very calming and centering and allows you to kind of get out of your own head and just and all the things you might have going on in your
Yeah.
life to just have some space and some quiet and some focus on something that is relaxing,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Um, I had the extraordinary episode of my podcast, and it
And
was
let's tell the listeners what the name of your podcast is.
is Artistically You podcast,
Yes.
and she talked about we talked about art journaling, which is another segment that you use to express your emotions and feelings, and sometimes just sketch things and play, and
Mhm.
uses paint, sometimes use collage magazines and things like that. And she was talking about that there was a dark moment in her life when she was trying to get pregnant and she would not
Mhm.
get pregnant. And um, and I have that in my blog actually. And she said that she made this art journal that the cover was black
Mm-hmm.
and it had these wings on the cover. And she said that, she put all the frustration and emotions in that art journal, playing with paint and sayings and quotes or words that she would write.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that it really took her from that dark period. And, today when she looks at that dark journal,
Mm-hmm.
it brings her the emotion, but also it reminds her that she eventually could, got pregnant and survive that period. But she said
That's
that
incredible.
that routine and to put the emotions there, it helped her a lot to go through that dark period. And there was a
Yeah.
moment also that her mother got sick in that time. And it is a very, very emotional episode because I think it was one that was more profound to me because it was so deep, the emotions that she, used on that journal and how that was so healing for her.
That is incredible. That
Yeah.
really truly is incredible. So she took the act of journaling, which in and of
Yes.
itself is very powerful and something that honestly I have wanted to incorporate into my daily, rituals because I will. I've heard so many people say so many powerful things about it. So she
Yes.
took the act of journaling and the act of creating and kind of
Hmm.
combined them together in one thing,
Yeah.
right?
And
Yeah.
this is what I was going to say. Many people, even me, I have also trouble to keep a journal. I write here and there, but I have trouble. And
Yeah.
when I changed a little bit my point of view and started to include more a little art journal related kind
Uh-huh.
of thing, it made me write more. Because
Okay.
art journal, you can write as much or as little as you want. I have
Sure.
pages
Yeah.
that I just have the word calm.
Mm.
I knew
Mhm.
what that meant in that time.
Right.
And sometimes
Right.
another techniques that we have is you can write all your emotions, hard emotions, and then you paint on top.
That's amazing.
So
So that you
I
can't even
think
see
it's
what
a
it says.
yeah, it's and also I think a way of saying, okay, I release that and I'm letting it go.
Okay.
And I think it's a way to say to people that if you are like me, like you have trouble just writing, like Oprah says, right? She has all these journals and she writes, right? I have trouble to keep that. I can write one time, but I have trouble keeping that every day.
Yeah.
But to me, if I put that emotions with words and pain, to me, it's more uh, life changing for me in terms of my emotions. So
That's interesting.
if you have trouble writing a lot, maybe try something like that. Another journal that I saw recently, I that is in my move, it's not here yet, but it's actually just stickers. I write little and I
Mhm.
put stickers or I write words that are big and I paint with markers. It's just for me. I never put that online. But it keeps me going because you don't feel like, oh, I have to write this whole page.
I love that
But
idea.
I think when you start to get the words out there,
Mhm.
and today I was listening a podcast of a psychologist, and she was saying that sometimes when something's bothering you or there is something that is you think is wrong, maybe putting that on paper helps to release from your mind, from your brain. So
Right.
that's what journaling brings as well, is helping you to release. And
Yeah.
sometimes also helps you question, why am
Yeah.
I feeling that way?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. You
I'm
think
telling you,
through things.
the paper is gonna answer you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. I It reminds me not to get too off track, but it reminds me one of my favorite shows is called Grace and Frankie. It's on Netflix and it's Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin and it's such a great show. But anyway, there's early on in one of the early seasons, maybe the first season, they're going through these really hard divorces with their husbands and they're feeling all these crazy emotions and Lily Tomlin's character Frankie decides that she's going to put her phone on a tripod or prop her phone up and she's going to, of course she gets high first because that's what she does, but she's going to prop her phone up and she's going to basically talk to herself on video and just start talking, almost like you would in a journal, but she's going to do it, and just whatever she's thinking. And when she watched it back the next day or whatever, it was very enlightening to her. And a long time later, she told Grace, Jane Fonda's character, to do the same thing. And of course, she thought she was crazy. She said, "I'm telling you, sometimes you say the things you need to hear, and you will be so surprised at the things you say when you're just speaking out loud instead of just this internal dialogue." And sure enough, for both of them, it was very eye-opening. It was so funny, but so true. It's the same with journaling, I would guess, that sometimes you're just like, wow, I didn't put it together like that before, so.
Yeah, and people can check on my blog. I have article about what is our journaling, so they can,
good.
for sure we're going to have
We'll
more
link to that in the
about
show notes for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to link to all these great resources you're mentioning in the show notes, because I love that idea. I'm glad you talked about that. I've never heard about that, and certainly probably would never thought about it. So I think that's fantastic. What a great combination.
Yeah.
So obviously, and we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but obviously it's important that we sort of keep these creative endeavors of ours joyful. That's the whole point, right? Is for them to be fun and relaxing. So what are some things that we can do to make sure that we keep them being joyful, and rather than doing things, putting things on ourselves or creating situations in our life or whatever, that now all of a sudden have taken them from being joyful and calming to maybe being frustrating or draining? I know sometimes I think people can get too serious about things, or maybe they feel they put pressure on themselves or whatever. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think first you have to see your goals, right? If your goal is just to release emotion, to have fun, for example, this person that went and talked to me about that, she actually, when I invited her, she said, "Why are you inviting me? I'm not an artist." And I said, "No, you are. You create scrapbooking, you create journals, you document your life." So in her case, she has a full-time job. Yeah. What she wants is to document her life and express her emotion and play. We actually do sometimes Zoom creating our journals together.
Oh, fun.
So in that case, you can remove the pressure from it if you put your mindset of that. The thing is, if you think, wow, I'm having so much fun and I want to learn more about painting, I maybe want to explore more watercolor, or I want to explore more acrylics, then you have to understand that with anything that we learn, there is a learning curve, and there is frustrations that comes with it.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm sure when you did pottery the first time,
oh my goodness,
everybody says that you're building the thing and then the thing falls.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Or you're gonna put on the thing that, what's the name that you put in the oven? It's not an oven. Kiln?
Oh, in the kiln. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it breaks, right?
Yep.
So, but that is a learning curve, because then okay, next time I need to do this and this to make sure that it doesn't break. So with painting, it comes a lot of practice and a lot of things that you're not gonna like, and a lot of, I think it's a lifelong learning.
Yeah.
But I think it is important for you to be sure what you want, but also be okay to release things that don't make you feel good.
Yeah.
So if you use social media, for example, to get inspired, to meet other artists, to make friendships, to connect, great.
Right.
But we have to be careful as people that are trying to learn things, whatever it is. If you feel a little bit of, oh, that person makes some things that are so beautiful and I'm never going to do something like that,
Mm-hmm.
then I don't think that is helping you.
That's
So you
right.
have
I
to be
agree.
conscious of that kind of thing. And listen, I have artists that they do amazing work. They are fabulous people, but I don't follow them.
Yeah.
First of all, because I don't want to get influenced by them. Because, as a person that sells art, I don't want to get influenced by other people.
Sure.
But I also don't want to get on my brain get comparison. I'm aware of
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
you
It's
have to
that's
be
not
aware.
good.
Like if you like, I like sometimes to do embroidery. I do embroidery. I don't post anything, but I like to buy kits.
Mm-hmm.
I see people that do amazing embroidery. Am I ever going to be like them? No, but I don't want to, and that's fine.
Right.
So they don't affect
Yeah.
me. So you have to know what you want. But if you're just having fun with art journaling and you want to learn more about art journaling, you're following art journal, the hashtag art journaling on Instagram, and that's fine. But if you feel inside, and I think awareness is what is lacking today.
Oh, so much.
People, I think,
Self-awareness. Yes.
yeah, people are sometimes, I think, putting these bad names on social media, but social media is there. We are the ones using it. So
Yeah.
I think what is lacking is the self-awareness that social media can be bad for you, but it can be good for you. It depends on how you yourself take it.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I agree. I could not agree more. And I also think too that in keeping it joyful and not feeling pressure to do it when you don't feel like doing it. You do it when you feel like doing it. It's supposed to,
Yes.
there's no reason to force yourself. It's not one of those types of things. Also, I think, again, talking about what we said earlier, don't spend a ton of money on it up front,
Yes.
because then you're going to feel pressure. You're going to think, I spent all this
Mm-hmm.
money, now I have to do it. And it takes the joy out of it when you
Yeah.
come at it from that angle. And I think also, if you can have, and I found for myself too, and I'm sure you've I know you have an actual dedicated studio space now, but
Mm-hmm.
but I
Oh, but it
think if
was
you
not
can,
like this before. It was not
right,
like this before.
exactly. And I think if you can just find a designated area in your home, I don't
Oh,
care
yeah.
if it's a corner desk, an
Mm-hmm.
actual room, whatever it is,
Well,
the dining room table probably not good, but
actually what I did in the beginning when I was a stamper,
uh-huh.
and that's what I, advise everybody. You don't want to have a studio for yourself. I
Yeah.
had a basket. I had a
Yes.
basket, and I had all my stamps, my ink pads, you know, and I would
It-
bring to the dining table.
yeah, somewhere comfortable, right? You want to be in
Yeah,
a comfortable space, and just make it
yeah,
easy for you to immediately start. You don't have to go
exactly.
and set up for 15 minutes and
Yeah,
tear down for 15 minutes. It's got
yeah.
to be
Later, I
easy.
started to want more things, and I started
Mhm.
scrapbooking. So what I did, I bought a little table and put on my bedroom, on the corner of
Okay.
my bedroom.
Yeah.
And I had everything there. I had this, drawers, and I have everything there in that little corner. I had everything. I
Yeah.
always was like a person that I never was crazy about buying things. I just bought really what I needed. Like
Right.
I did a huge cleanup when I had to move houses just before moving here, but I moved houses in Washington,
Mhm.
and I realized, okay, I bought some things thinking I was going to play with it, but I didn't. So I don't think it's my thing, because if it was, I would have used it.
Right.
So trying to see also what really you like, but don't feel bad that if you buy something to discover, and yeah, it's not for me.
Exactly.
But in the beginning, grab a basket, grab a corner. I do embroidery. I have all in a Ziploc bag, and I sit on the sofa while my husband's watching TV or something.
Sure.
You
Sure. You
don't
got to
need
make it
to have,
easy.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Because otherwise, it can be just frustrating. You think, oh, I got to set up for 15 minutes,
mm-hmm,
and then I've got to put it all away, and
yeah,
that's a big detour. It detours you right before you even get going. So that's important stuff. I wanted to get your thoughts, and I think I know how you feel about this, but I really believe that beyond creating things ourselves, which is what we've been talking about so far, I do also believe that just being in the presence of things that others have created, even, or things we've created, but just things that creations that we just really love, that just spark joy, to take from Marie Kondo, that just
Yes.
give us joy. I think it's so important to bring some of that stuff into our surroundings, whether it's
Yeah.
home or office or whatever, and not a lot, not like clutter it up, because I don't think being cluttered is good for anybody. I think it's more important to have a few things that actually mean something to you, whether they cost $1 or $1,000 or whatever. I think it's just good for your soul, and it just makes life so much lovelier, I think. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm biased, of course. I sell art. I sell my
Yep.
art. And the
Yeah,
reason
lovely art.
why I could be doing other things with my art, but the reason
Yeah.
why I decided to put my art out there and sell is because the same way I believe that colors heals you, the playing with your hands heal you, or play with something that is artistic and brings you joy heals you, and brings you joy and brings you peace and make you feel, practice your mindfulness. With my heart, I solely believe that you know having around of yourself in your house art, color, because whatever it brings emotions to you, art bring emotions,
Yeah.
not just the emotion that the artist create, but every collector that buys they have they see the art in another way. It brings some memory to them.
Sure.
Every art. I like to have this, what I call them whimsical girls.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a comment of a collector that bought that it was so touching for me, because she said, it reminds me of my grandmother,
Oh, wow.
right? So what she really meant is, it reminds me of my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I have another one that bought, and
That's
she
so
said,
lovely.
I was receiving that in the mail, and she bought an original, and she's like, I was so emotional when I saw the original, because it was so prettier in person. And then I was opening, and my son asked, what is this? And she said, this is art. And she said that she had the whole conversation with her son about art.
Wow. That's
And
wonderful.
that of course makes my day.
Mm-hmm.
I have teachers that bought my prints and said, I'm hanging here on my empty classroom to bring
That's
me
amazing.
happiness while my students are not here.
Oh, isn't
So,
that nice?
yeah, and then, like, every time I hear this, because of course not everybody takes the time to tell you, unfortunately. I wish everybody that buys your art would stop and say something.
Yeah.
But it's when I hear comments like this, it makes me think that I'm not crazy. It really brings memories and stories and pleasure.
Yeah.
I myself like to surround myself, with many things from other artists. I have watercolors that I love, and bought art. I have art from Brazil, from local artists. And every time I pass, no matter how many years, I have this art from Brazil, from a local person there. It's just beautiful, but it's so simple, so
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
But every time I pass by it, I look at it. And I
Mm-hmm.
have this art for, like, I think 7 years now. And I always think in myself, and I look at it, it's so pretty. I
Mm-hmm.
love to have
Yeah.
you here. And,
Yeah.
you know, in that moment, my brain stops and it gives that spark. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same way I believe, because I'm a more botanical person, I also believe, in flowers. That flowers bring happiness.
Oh,
And that's why
100%.
most of my paints are related to flowers. But
Yeah.
I believe that impact. And also pieces of art. I love, you know, pottery. So, like, this intrinsic pots that people do. I love mugs, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they bring
Yeah.
me happiness. And
Yeah.
I think we should look at them, in a way that it's not just something that is there on your wall. It's something to bring a memory. It's something to bring you happiness and joy. And also, art doesn't bring just happiness for you, but if you
Mm-hmm.
get art as a gift or
Oh,
artful
yeah.
gift, it's it brings so much joy to the other person. I When I was a card maker, I was give this card to my friends, and they loved it. They were like, "Oh, is this handmade?" Or, you know.
Yep.
And I think it's different when you give someone an art that an artist made, a local artist, than some art that you bought at Hobby Lobby.
Oh, 100%.
They are
You know,
beautiful. Hobby Lobby
yeah,
has amazing art. But do
sure.
I know the history of the art? Can
No.
I go to Instagram and see that? I don't even know. You don't even see the name of the person that did.
I always, I oftentimes, especially at the holidays for family members and things, I buy artistic works from local artists usually, and they're not necessarily big fancy things, but they're
Hmm.
lovely. And or sometimes I'll find them online, but they are handmade by an
Handmade
individual.
soaps, handmade
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
And I give those to family members, and they always absolutely love them. And I can always
Hmm.
tell them something about the artist, even if it's just something that I learned on their about page or where they're from or whatever. And people just so appreciate that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's just
I always
incredible.
I always have like on a card when I sell something or in my website, like follow me on Instagram. It's not just for numbers or you'll be there, but you're
Yeah.
gonna have when someone buys something, you will probably have a chance to see how I made your art
Yes, that's
because
right.
I have the videos there, right?
Yes.
So it's also sharing with people how your art got done,
Mhm.
right? And you
Yes.
cannot see that kind of history when you buy something from Michael's or Hobby Lobby, which, if you
No.
are out of the United States, is two craft stores here that also sell home decor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And it feels different too, right? I think there is something about, I mean, without getting real woo woo about things, I think that when you buy something from an individual who, not something that came off a print machine of 5,000 copies, right?
mhm.
But you're buying something that was created by an individual, handmade. And even if it is reproductions and things, that's still, when it's close to the artist, there's a different energy that you get
Yeah,
from those things. It's almost like there's a piece of that artist's
yeah,
energy still there. You know what I mean?
and
It just, there's something
right.
unique about it.
And I believe as well in affordable art, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why I believe in giving the opportunity to people to buy my art in print
Mm-hmm.
because
Yes,
they can have art.
absolutely.
Because I was many years I could not buy any kind of homemade or not even a print.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I understand that sometimes people want to have something pretty, and I
Yes,
also believe,
absolutely.
and I know your podcast about this, but I always believe in the power of supporting women.
Yes.
I buy a lot. Probably 99% of my clothing now comes from little boutique stores that women sell clothing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, I try to buy on Etsy, usually from women,
Yeah.
because we know it's hard for us out there, especially for us
Yeah.
that have kids and little kids like me.
Yeah.
And I think it's a different story than you buying a soap at Whole Foods.
It is. It absolutely is. Yeah, even if it's something that the maker is creating in batches or reproductions, like you said, prints, it is still very close to them. It's very close to their
It
heart.
is a dream, right? It is a
Yeah,
dream. It is like
it's,
for us that create and sell to people, it is a dream, but it is also a little bit of our hearts that go with it,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
right? To
absolutely.
think that I have things that I did with my hands and giving joy to people.
Yeah,
That is my hope,
absolutely.
you know, and that
Absolutely.
will maybe get them, especially get them to try something themselves, feel
Yes,
motivated
even
about it.
better. Yeah,
Yeah.
even better. Well, before we wind it on down here, I wanted to ask you, what do you feel is an easy and inexpensive way for somebody who kind of wants to start testing the waters creatively? Maybe they haven't done much, if anything, in
Hmm.
that department in their life. What's a good and easy and inexpensive way for them to begin or to get started, do you think?
Okay. So this is exactly what I did here because all my studio is not here yet. And this is what I did when I went to buy my son's school supplies. I bought a composition notebook, which is again $1 at Target. You buy lined and everything. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I bought some color pencils and markers, a set of Sharpie markers, and some pencils. And I just used to doodle. If you want to go an extra mile and be a little more fancier, but cheap also, you can actually buy Crayola paints. Target sells as well, any craft store, and the brushes. If you want to buy a little set of acrylic cheap paint from the brand of Michaels also, that's fine. But you can certainly buy Crayola. And by the way, Crayola markers, they activate with water, so you can create kind of a watercolor kind of effect.
Oh, that's fun.
Why do I like the composition notebook? Because it forces you to, yes, they bleed if you put water. Yes, sometimes they get crinkled, but it doesn't matter. You are just playing. And this is what I'm doing right now. I just bought 5 tubes of acrylic paint. I bought a cheap set of brushes, and I bought some markers, some color pencils at Target, and that's what I'm using while all my stuff is not here. And you know what? It felt so good when I started doing that.
You're like, just give me something to make some color with. Yeah.
You know, if you're overwhelmed going to a craft store like Michael's, you know, if you are out of the United States, when you go to a craft store, you can get overwhelmed.
Oh my goodness.
So if you go to a place like Target or any store that is more generic, nowadays Target is selling even watercolor paper, so it's fun. They have a lot of stuff now.
That is a very good tip. That is a very good tip.
Yeah, they have cheap stuff there now. They have cheap acrylic paint. They have cheap watercolor pads, sketch pads. So you don't feel like you are like, you know, if it's not for you, you're not going to break the bank. Because I think it's cheaper than if you go to a more craft store, big store.
Yes, and like you said, those can be very overwhelming. If you don't know what all those things are, there is so much. It's almost, you just almost feel like I'm just leaving.
You can never go wrong with you can never go wrong with Crayola stuff. Buy the Crayola stuff, you can never go wrong with them.
That's right. I agree. Yeah, I think and also, of course, in fact, you have some on your YouTube channel. We'll link to that in the show notes too. But I think going to YouTube, there's plenty of wonderful free tutorials all over the place. So any kind of art that you're interested in doing, you can just, just search it out and find some people that you like to learn from, and it doesn't cost a thing to begin there.
Yes, I actually, if you guys go to my YouTube, I just starting to post a free watercolor for beginners class there in 6 parts, and you can start there. I'm gonna be putting way more videos on my YouTube than what I have now. As soon as my stuff got here, I really get people. I'm thinking to do even some relaxing painting. It's just painting with music for you to relax.
That'd be lovely.
Not me talking, not me it's just watch and listen to the music and just relax. If you need that just as a relaxation.
And that's great inspiration for people too.
Yeah, and I know that people tell me all the time that sometimes just watching somebody paint is very relaxing. So I'm thinking to do a series like that. So just stay tuned. But for now, I have 2 videos so far from the free class. So if you want to just try, but I will have more things related to washes, how to relax and things like that, in the near future in the YouTube channel.
Oh, good. Well, tell everybody where the best place is to not only learn about all the cool things you've got going on, but also to buy your beautiful art if they want to take a look at your shop.
Yes, you can get all my links, everything, my YouTube channel, my Instagram, my Facebook. Although I'm more active on YouTube and Instagram, and my shop, because I sell originals, I sell prints, and I sell gifts from my art. And everything is at 2 worlds and number 2 worlds art.com.
Okay, the number 2 worldsart.com, and I'll link that up in the show notes. And of course, don't forget the Artistically You podcast.
Yes.
And that you're talking there with other creators and that sort of thing,
Yes.
right? About just
Yes, not just all kinds of creators,
yeah,
and also all people related to also relaxation, mindfulness, things like that. We're just gonna have an episode soon about essential oils, and that is coming up. So I'm trying to bring not just people related to art, but also people related to how to get you started with, getting relaxed and things like that.
the wellness
But I also
piece
have
of it all.
episodes just with myself, talking more about art and things like that. Like I talked about creativity or journaling, things like that. And again, you can also see, search on all podcasts like Artistically You, or you can go to my website and you also have a link there.
Yes, and I think definitely everybody that should follow you on Instagram too, because you do some really fun stuff over there. You're always putting pretty things in my Instagram feed, and I appreciate that. So
Thank you.
I'm sure others will too.
you.
So anyway, thank you for doing this with me again. It has been so fun for us to
Well,
get
it's
to
great.
chat about this. We're going to
Yes.
have to continue to chat about this offline, and not just limit it to this. But anyways, I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me. So much fun to be here.